Peace, family. My name is Angela N. Carroll. Welcome to the 2021 Black Femme Supremacy Film Festival. I am the programmer this year, a curator and writer, and I'm so excited to be in conversation with our feature film crew. Our feature film is Dis-Placia, Vacants in the Village, and I'm honored, truly honored, to be in conversation with these revolutionaries and visionaries. First, executive producer, Nneka N'namdi, director Jewel Guy, and composer Maurice Carroll. How are y'all doing today?
Amazing.
Good, good.
Excellent. So we're gonna jump right in and talk about this brilliant documentary that is so timely, right, and so important. And I think it sheds a new light on Baltimore, right, and many cities across the country like Baltimore. There's a common notion that somehow poverty just happens on its own, right? The Black people just want to be poor and want to be on drugs, and it just happens to us, right? And I think what the brilliance of the work that Nneka does regularly with Fight Blight Baltimore, as well as what has been uncovered in this film, it shows, right? It highlights, it elucidates that this violence, right, and this history of violence is not new, and it isn't by happenstance, right? It is designed this way, right? Poverty is a design, right? It's a system that is happening effectively, right, and successfully, and to the detriment of working class or impoverished or poor communities of color, and Black communities especially. Can Jewel or Nneka, can you talk a little bit about what inspired the creation of this really important documentary?
Sure. So really just wanting to tell the story very clearly of blight in Baltimore, like how blight came into being, what it is and how it impacts community. But more than any of that is what we're doing, like countering the notion that we're not doing and we haven't been doing anything to address blight in our community. So I really wanted to tell the story of those folks who are on the ground in their communities every day, trying to do what is real community development. And so Dis-Placia was kind of born out of it's the third installment of a transmedia series. One was, a visual art display of statistics and pictures, imagery, and other displays about what blight is and how it shows up in community. And then the second was a community-based hackathon where folks came in and talked about not only what data and information was available to help people to develop their solutions, right, or to bring their solutions into being, but also as an opportunity for us to learn about what was happening. And so the film is really the culmination of those two events, just really wanting to bring that story forward.
Absolutely. And so I think it's a pleasure to be able to string all of these things together, because I've seen all of the pieces separately, which becomes a hard task when you're trying to funnel it down into a fluid documentary series that people can really digest and want to take action from. So I just count it as a pleasure and a privilege that Nneka and I actually met at the right time in a fellowship together for Warnock, just getting our things funded, getting our work done. And she just pulled me up and said, you know what? I got something I need you to do. And at that time, I don't even think I was as confident in myself about film, but I know that is where I wanted to go. And so I always start with just appreciation for a Black woman believing in me, to the point where she would say, all right, here's the vision, go run with it, and we'll touch bases throughout the process so this can get done. So I'm really excited about what we could put together in this film.
Beautiful. Ashe for Black women's belief. you know,
Okay.
heal the whole world, you know, burn down Babylon and all the things, you know. Can you talk a little bit about, because I know you've said that this is like the third iteration in a very long-term project, right? Can you talk about sort of how long it took from conceptualization to like completion of post-production for you to have a film that you could show in this final iteration to the public?
Yeah. So I believe we started in about 2018, about 3 years ago, right? And so when you see these films and they're like coming out 2 years later, you're like, Dad, why it take so long? Like it's a process for real. So just a series of events, and then either other events inside of community to help continue to tell the story, like the inception of the Black Arts District coming together and having community come together with other resources and organizations that are linking people to the people who are spearheading the work, but also showing them how they could get involved and how they could get their questions answered, you know, and bring those resources back to their community. So 3 years total of just doing Nneka doing events, her calling me saying, all right, we're doing another event. Let's film this. Let's make sure we get these captures so we can put those inside of the film. So 3 years total of really bunkering down and capturing, and probably, I don't know, let's just call it 9 months, right? Pregnancy. About 9 months of really hard post-production, getting all of these things together and lining it up and working really closely with Maurice, and understanding that process too, right? What it takes to be a composer. Because, you know, on one hand, you're like, okay, I see all of these beautiful things coming together, but what does that mean to another part of the team that has a specialty that really brings out what you're actually seeing, so that you can not only see it, but you can feel it. And so that was just a beautiful process that we really did an amazing job together over the last 9 months, just coming back and saying, okay, yep, that's too long. Nope, take that out. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? How about this? Which is, in my opinion, is challenging at times, because you know you want to get it right. At least for me, you want to get it right. You want to get it done, but you want to make sure that you're honoring every part. You're honoring what the visionary has foreseen of this. You're honoring the composer who feels different things as he's watching it, and can give you a different interpretation, which is basically what the audience is going to give you in a way as well. So just having multiple hands in the project is so helpful, because you can't see it all by yourself.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful segue, because I was going to ask you about film is a team sport. And a lot of people think, oh, I can just go out there and I can do this yourself.
Yes.
You can, right? But if you want to do it well, you know, you go with the team, right? And so, Maurice, want to bring you into the conversation to talk about your role as a composer on this project, and how beautiful the score is, and how it really does, you know, enunciate each of the scenes, the urgency of the visions, you know, that are being realized by Jules' camera and her hand. Can you talk about your process? Are you watching the film and scoring live to it, sort of improvisational? Are you watching it and then actually writing music to it? What's your process?
Yeah, so I have different processes depending on what I'm composing for. With this particular film, first of all, Joelle knows this. I kept getting so caught up in the information and watching it from out of enjoyment that it took me a second to kind of rewind and say, "Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be composing music with this." So, but with this process, it was really focusing in on whatever the emotion was. So I compose music and produce music from a metaphysical standpoint. It's not just what feels good, but for me, when I operate, is it in the right frequency? Is this the right key? Is this the right tempo? Is this moving too much or moving too little? What is the listener, what is the viewer going to feel from this? What instruments am I going to use to make sure that this word gets enunciated? What how am I going to flow from one scene to the other where it's seamless and it doesn't feel forced? Those are the processes that I think about, when I'm composing. And with this, it was so much, drama with a lot of the stories, and it kind of opened me up to give me lane to kind of, oh, well, this is clearly this feeling. And then there are other aspects where you might be feeling, say, angry for a moment, but I'm playing something in contrast to that to kind of bring you in to what the person is actually saying. So for me, having that dialogue with Jewel about, what's the feeling? What do we need to have here? And her saying, go for it, and giving me lane to do that. It's such an empowering feeling to know that you can help people feel emotion just from the sounds that are being used.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole. I don't think I fully realized the importance of a score until I realized how many of the films I loved were composed by some of the musicians that I love. Like, I was like, dang, Quincy Jones did hella scores back in the day. And like Miles Davis did hella scores for like super obscure French films,
Right.
And I'm like, bruh, like you did super, so many of the greats. So yeah, that role is essential and very, very important. I want to jump back to Nneka for a second because she's very humble and it was very short with the work that she does, but it's important because so much of this film is about the work that you do with Fight Blight Baltimore, about the data that is being assessed and analyzed from that organization. So if you can speak a little bit about just bare bones, what is blight? Like, what is blight? And what is the work that Fight Blight Baltimore is doing, and how did your work sort of come into the film?
So blight is the presence especially in concentration in any neighborhood of, vacant properties, abandoned properties, dilapidated properties, underutilized or misutilized properties. And so what it creates is a vacuum where it's a sucking out of people, resources, access, recreation, education, it's safety. All of these things are sucked out of a community when you have many spaces in the community not being used in the way that they were designed, or not being used to their highest and best use, or the highest and best use of community. And so our work really focuses on, one, painting a picture for folks using the data of what the impact of blight is in our communities. Like, how does it actually impact us? It's not just that it doesn't look good. It means that we're not, if you have a lowered population, then that is less money because of how federal dollars are apportioned. That's less federal money coming into your community for schools, for medical care, for hospitals and that different, for, roads or infrastructure. And so drawing the connection between funding, property taxes, federal funding, different sort grant funding, and the presence in our community of these blighted properties is really where our work centered. Because for a lot of what we hear is it just doesn't look good. We talk about it from the standpoint of looks, the surface level, but not understanding that people who walk past vacant properties experience elevated heart rates, right? Which is a sign of chronic stress, which if you already are living in a neighborhood where you don't have access to nutrient-dense, nutritious, culturally appropriate food, is another stressor that could, contribute to hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, right? So it creates and becomes a comorbidity, but we don't necessarily understand how. Or that these are the same neighborhoods that are over policed, where there's hyper surveillance of people, but they are lowered, banking options, they are lower recreation options. So really, the work is designed to help folks see the data and understand the data in ways that doesn't pathologize the people who live in the community. it pathologizes, or it shows the pathology in the conditions that have been created in community, mostly by external forces. So the film itself, because one of the things, folks don't see the line. One of the aims of the film is to draw the line all the way through. So we can see how neighborhoods that in our lifetime, right, were full, vibrant, rich, life spilling out, onto the stoop, right, from inside the house, are now, abandoned, just literal ghost towns, right? To see how we got there, what policies, what practices, what caused that, but also, again, what folks are already doing in community. And that includes, like, we actually have Fight Black Be More is have started. One of the things that we recognize from the data is there are no spaces in our community for us to do innovation or incubation of tech, of businesses. So we were able to acquire a vacant lot and a vacant house, and we are in the process of renovating it and turning it into a state-of-the-art imagination, innovation, and incubation space, because we have to have spaces where we can be creative, where we have access to tech, where we have access to resources, so that the genius that lives inside of us can come out and support the development of our community. Because Baltimore has all kinds of tech hubs, all kinds of innovation spaces, but the vast majority of them are not inside the Black Butterfly, which is a series of Black communities, or series of communities in Baltimore that have predominantly Black populations.
Exactly. And there's a corollary, right? And for those that are not based in Baltimore or not familiar with the area, when Nneka references the Black Butterfly, she's talking about a sort of result of redlining, right? So there's what's known as the White L areas that have historically been marginalized, or rather situated for or allotted to white ownership. And then there are all of the neighborhoods that are sort of on the outside, or outgrowths or from that, which when looking down on it aerially looks sort of like a butterfly. And those are communities that have historically been relegated to the outskirts of white areas. And so that the history of redlining persists in the present. And I think that's what so much of the work that you've done, and also the work that Dis-Placia, Vacants in the Village unpacks or reveals, is that the current state of things is again the result of many policies, right? Many systems. It isn't just lazy Black people, right? It isn't just, drug addicted Black people who, if they worked harder, they could change their situation, right? It's more complex than that.
Actually, it is the lazy Black people, drug addicted Black people are the symptom, right? It does not have anything to do with the actual causes. The causes, are, like you mentioned, redlining, but also blockbusting and staring and contract lending and restrictive covenants. It is all of these government policies. Even if you go back to the 1800s, there were policies that said that Black people, even though Baltimore had a large population of free Black people in the period of enslavement, Black people couldn't own carts. So we couldn't sell, even if we could grow our wares, right? Grow extra produce or create baskets or make any kind of quilts, we could not have a cart to sell them. So if you don't have a cart, that if you think about the cart as a symbol for property, right? If you don't have a cart, even though you're free in the 1870s, then when you pass away, that's a piece of property that you can't pass on, right? So these are public policies that draw, cause, economic hardship in our communities from the arrival of the first Africans in the Chesapeake Bay Basin all the way into today, right? Whether it's subprime lending, these things never stop. They tend to mutate like a virus, right? Racism doesn't just die off. It mutates into new forms, right? New forms of displacement. So to today, they are dismantling public housing. and you see Black people being displaced out of neighborhoods because public housing is going away, and they're given vouchers that only enable them to relocate to neighborhoods of opportunity or neighborhoods of choice. But many of those neighborhoods are predominantly white neighborhoods where people encounter a lot of animus because we're not wanted. And they're outside of the traditional communities that we have lived in. So there are all of these policies, there are all of these practices, but none of them have anything to do, with Black people being lazy. In fact, we probably should be resting much more. Not, but the notion of laziness does not factor into Blight in any significant fashion at all.
Yeah. And I think that's why the film is so important, because it highlights and sheds more light on a lot of the stereotypes that are placed on Black cities in Baltimore, even from the previous administration in the White House, right, where Baltimore is situated as crime-ridden and rat-infested, right, and this notion, this misnomer, and this mischaracterization about the state of Black cities, or really the global South, right? Black people across the world, as always inept and as always lesser than, is something that I think your film is working to counter, right? Is working to again show the systems, the histories of violence that create the present conditions. I want to jump a little bit back to Jewel to talk about like your weapons of choice, right? Like you're using, this could be anything, right? Like Nneka has been making reports about this work for a long time. And so and then various visualizations of the work as well. What are you using, or what, production software, what cameras, for the tech junkies that'll be watching, what are you using to create this work? And why did you feel that film was an important media, or documentary was an important format to tell these stories?
Yeah, so let's start with tech. So I use primarily a Canon 6D, and it was because when I started photography, 5 years ago, I started with a crop frame sensor camera. And so it was great for taking pictures, but it wasn't that great for video. So I wanted to find something that was within that kind of low to medium price point that would give me the ability to learn about the camera, to use it to its fullest capacity, and to also do something like this, documentaries, to create something beautiful with something so simple. I also would like to acknowledge Daryl Taylor, who is also one of our directors of photography that helped to shoot many of the interviews. So he used a Sony, I believe it's like an A7, very crisp, very clean, very light. And he was responsible for all of the beautiful lighting that we saw within the primary interviews with one-on-one people. So those were the things that we used. Very not much equipment, which is really good for me, because I feel like when it's too much, that can leave room for confusion and make you want to just sit down and not do it. So I wanted to just have enough arsenal that it's like I can just carry it on my back and I can be ready to go. I chose documentaries because I actually started with a photo documentary series in 2017 called Show Your Love. And I interviewed over 50 Black couples about their love story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how they sustain. And so what I found was, after taking pictures, after doing dictation, after formatting all of that stuff, I was like, there's got to be a better way to tell the story, even though when they were reading, when the audience was reading it, they could hear their voices. They could feel the inflections through the words. But it's something about seeing that person's emotions on screen and hearing the words come out of their mouth that I really wanted to dive into. And I've always just been a fan of documentaries in general. That's kind of how I latch on to like different artists or learn about things about nature. It just gives us an up close and personal view that we wouldn't be able to get unless that director, that funder, whoever that is that got the ball rolling actually said, yes, we're going to do that. And so I just wanted to be a part of that group of people that told people stories, or at least could be a great medium in which the story can come through and be shown in a way that people can digest it. And I'm always thinking about how can we do things differently? Because we're not islands. We're not in this thing by ourselves. There are people all around us every day, many of which that we don't acknowledge, many of which we have implicit biases, even in our own communities. When we walk through these communities, like your last question about, blight, I was sitting on a block today, and literally there's blight everywhere. And, of course, there's drugs being moved in that area too. But now that I have been through this experience, I look at it so much more differently. I don't look at it as, oh, okay, they're just wasting, time. They are very strategic. They are very innovative, right? They are doing what they can with what they have based on the circumstances that redlining has put into place, that, disinvestment has put into place. And then one thing that we don't talk about much is how we internalize all of those things. And many times without even knowing, right? You see children in blighted neighborhoods and they're having the time of their lives because children make everything better, right? But somewhere along the line, we start internalizing those things, that broke down things that don't seem to have value are a part of us. And so in this film, I wanted people to really understand that, first of all, we're valuable. Like, you can't even put a price on our value. We're beyond valuable, but starting to look at our governments and the systems in the critical way that we need to be, and stop kind of living life haphazardly and just going along with what is, and start really thinking for yourself. And I think that's what documentaries help to do, is to really give you some nuggets, some information, some facts that you can begin creating your own thought process around. And so that's why I'm really excited about the medium of documentaries, because, everybody needs a bit more truth.
Yeah, beautiful. Can you tell me a little bit? You mentioned funding, right? Which is the next question. Film is a very expensive medium, and oftentimes people don't recognize that it does take years and years and years to do a film, particularly documentary, not only because of the subject matter and the research that goes into it, but also because of the funding, the fees that are associated with, purchasing equipment or paying a team to shoot or edit or, crew or all the things, right? And so can you talk a little bit about how much of this was self-funded? Did you rely on community for like crowdsourcing? Did you receive grants? Like, how did you support this effort?
So let's do Nneka.
So actually, the film was primarily funded through the Deutsche Foundation. We were, Jess Solomon was working there at one point, and she was really engaged in the work that we were doing. And so she was able to, we were able to collaborate with the Deutsche Foundation to get funding to do this film.
Yeah, right on. And they funded a lot of really important projects in Baltimore as well. You all have also screened the film. This won't be the premiere at our festival. You've screened the film at other places before as well. Can you, if I'm not incorrect, can you talk a little bit about what community response to the screenings has been?
So we did a small premiere first with the Black Yale Institute, which is also featured in the film. So we did about the first 30 minutes or so of it. And the response was actually really amazing. We had a nice talk back after, and just the questions that come up and the dialogue that happens. I think you can only hope that that's what happens with a film like this, like that people will want to ask their questions, to gain more knowledge. How do I purchase a vacant property, right? Which Fight Like Baltimore is really really versed in, right? How do you get vacant properties? How do you the titles and the deeds for homes, and saving Big Mama's house, as we call it. How do we make sure we secure legacy, and not let the systems that be just drag you along in their process, and hoping that you're not really paying attention, because that's how a lot of people's houses get taken from them. Like, we're used to living in a space, but we don't know the business and the capitalistic mindset behind these things that happen. And so we have to get really more well versed in those areas, and we can't be like walk around blind to it, right? Because that's what the system wants you to do. They just want you to just walk around, and as soon as you're not paying attention, we're gonna snatch it. But that's the reality of it. And so it is always to our benefit to be vigilant, and to be mindful of what's going on around us. And that's really what the film shows too, right? The people who are out there and saying, just in case you're not paying attention, let me show you, right? It's almost like the wisdom of the elders just coming around. Come on, baby, let's talk. Let me show you some things, right? And I think that is the spirit in which each community organization does those things. So inside of that talk back, it was just a lot of just good dialogue in that podcast set. And I think people were just ready to see the rest of it, because they were so drawn in the first 30 minutes. They were like, okay, well, where's the rest? And when can we see the rest? So far, it's been a lot of excitement around it.
Beautiful. And you can point them towards the Black Film Supremacy Film Festival to see the entire film and not just a portion of it. As a segue based on, that response, what do you hope viewing audiences, and this can be for all of you, to respond to, what do you hope that viewing audiences walk away having a better understanding of, or knowing once they've viewed this film?
I would say I really hope that people walk away with this notion that we are doing the work. Not only are we doing the work, that we are completely capable of developing, sustaining, maintaining, and passing on community as we understand it, or property as we understand it, for multiple generations. But that we have to understand and be prepared to, present offensive and defensive strategies against what has happened to us, right? So I think that that's the biggest, for me, that's the biggest takeaway, is to really start to position our understanding of what is happening, so that we can do just what Joel alluded to, which is saving Big Mama's house, because that's much bigger fundamentally than just the physical structure. It is about the continuity of family, but it's also about the continuity of community and culture. Because when you have blight, when you have the displacement of people now, for really, this is like the third major displacement of people of African descent in the, in and around this particular landmass, right? So we have to be about that particular business. And so we hope that the film starts people on the understanding, like, these houses, our family houses, these communities, if they were not valuable, then the developers and the neo-urban colonialists and the politicians and this one and that one would not be seeking to come into these communities and to displace us out of them. There is a whole economic system, there's a whole economic value system built on displacing us. And in that displacement, extracting both our physical property, right, and our intellectual and cultural property. And so it's important that we get clear about that. And I really hope that is what comes through the film, that we have assets. Our communities have value. Our neighborhoods are valuable. And this is what we can do both defensively. These are things, some of the things that are talked about in community are things that we can do defensively, to protect our neighborhoods, but also start the process of developing offensive strategies and tactics so that we don't find ourselves in another 50 years in the same predicament with a little different mutation, right? And so that's what I hope that people are able to take away from the film.
Yeah, so I mirror all of that. The only thing that I could really think about is action. Like, be righteously angry, but act. Don't just sit in that. Like, let it fuel you to do something. Like, literally, you don't have to have what you might think is a lot to do something. Have an idea, connect with your neighbors, connect with your family, connect with whoever you can reach out and touch, right? I hope that people start having greater conversations with the people that they live around as well, because that's what community building is. Like, even though we call a lot of the spaces that we live in communities, but it's not till we have those relationships that we can really say that this is community and we start working together. So it's back to like building trust within one another. And I think that takes consistency and persistence, right? So overall, I hope that people will spring into action and start finding the things that they can do within their own communities.
I hope that this film will do a couple of things, actually. I think and I hope that it will take and inspire this controlled emotion to kind of move people in a place where they feel all the emotion from it and they're thinking about it. And if they're thinking about it, then they'll say something. And if they say something, then action will take place. And then there'll be movement, there'll be change. For me, I just like when people get, riled up, but when it's moving in a logical, productive way. And that's what I hope that people take from this, just watching it, hearing the stories, getting all of the information that I know a lot of people probably didn't know, that I didn't know. I'm learning, I was inspired. I'm ready to take action, so I hope that that translates, for other people that are watching it, just to, yes, get emotional, but recognize that this emotion, if it's not controlled and if it's not moving in a logical, productive way, that is just going to be, it's going to be past. It's not really going to be of value. So to really be emotional about it, yes, but to take the thought, to take the speaking about it, tell somebody else about it, tell the story, and then let's move. Let's, like Joel said, like, let's take some action. Let's get it done.
Yes, sir. And that's the work, right? Like, do the work, get charged up and then do the work. So lastly, what are, jumping back to Joel and Nneka, what are some of their current or next projects, if you're in a position to talk about it? I know that this is your child and you're just now sort of birthing this into the world. So if you're not ready to talk about next projects yet, I completely understand.
Right. When you gonna get pregnant again?
Right. Weeks. Hold on.
Right. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm really grateful for just like breathing and like releasing this baby. I'm really glad that we can sit in it, that we can see it out, and that somebody else outside of ourselves is talking about it. Like, that makes my soul so happy. In the midst of that, it's not a project that I'm started yet, but I've been thinking about a lot. It's just the wisdom of our elders. I think we need that line, just like Nneka was talking about, that connection point, that line that just keeps going and connecting us all together. Our elders hold so much wisdom, and there is a disconnect between us and our elders. And I'm hoping to find ways that bring us closer. Like, we see things like TikTok videos where they have their parents coming in and the grandparents, right? That's one way of connection. I'm looking to connect people in ways where we can begin to start talking about things that we haven't been able to talk about in safe space, and in ways that are conducive for each generation, right? And honoring that. And how do we approach that, right? So I'm really big on how we speak to people, how we mediate situations, and how we love on each other, because I think that is where we really are going to find our strength. So I'm just willing to hear and just eager to hear some of the stories that our elders have and want to share with other people.
Yes. So projects. I always have 50, 11 projects going on. So one, I mentioned we are currently in the development or pre-development phases for the Hack Hub, which is our youth-focused, community-based imagination, innovation, and incubation space. We are also in actual full development for Fight Blight Be More, the mobile app, which is being designed to help people in community report data on blighted properties, get data on blighted properties, everything from, being able to report a dead tree to down power lines, but eventually even to be able to analyze the amount of tree cover in a particular neighborhood, or the roof cover, like how many roofs, the roof condition, not roof cover. So that our app should come out in December of this year, as well as we are in cooperation with Black Yield and the Farm Alliance, working on, and Parity Homes, working on a Black land sovereignty platform, which basically is a list of policy and legislative recommendations for the local and state government to repair the damage done by the repeated assaults on Black land ownership and on Black communities. And so those are my three main projects. I have some other things that I'm in the hopper that are coming, but I haven't been able to give full time to incubate them. But those are the things that we are really focused on right now.
So my projects are never ending. I'm always working on a documentary, on somebody's project, on a short film. I'm always working on something. I really can't name them all because I know a lot of my clients are, don't tell anybody anything yet, so, but I do have some artists that are working on some things that are quite promising. Some are already getting played on like satellite radio and rotation and things like that. Some, I have two that are Grammy nominated artists that I'm working with now. So my plate stays full and I love it because it beats the opposite, so.
Right on. So last note, how can folks stay in touch with you? What are social media handles, or what's the best way to stay in touch with you on the internets?
On the interwebs. So I can be found, or we at fightblightbemore.com is our website. We are Fight Blight Be More on Facebook, Fight Blight Be More with no E on Twitter, and Blight to Bright on Instagram. Additionally, if someone has challenges, we have launched the Stop Oppressive Seizures Fund, which aims at disrupting and dismantling those policies and practices that erode Black land ownership, and then decolonizing our understanding of real property, right? Physical property or land. And so if you have, a family house that's in tax sale, if you have a water bill you don't know what to do with, if you have a property that was your great-great-grandfather's and they've been dead since 1970 and the title work hasn't been done, the SOS Fund can help you and your family walk through the process of protecting and retaining that asset in your family. And so that you can reach out to the SOS Fund at sosfund.com. And I'm Nneka at fightblightbemore.com if anyone would like to email me.
Jewel, I think you're on mute. Yep.
Okay, so I'm on Instagram, jewelguide.co. And if you click the link in my bio, you can find me everywhere else because that's just easy. But yeah, jewelguide.co is also my website address as well.
It's easy for me. Social media is my government. It's Maurice Carroll, and my website is mauricecarroll.net. Simple. Keep it simple.
And I'm Angela Carroll, Angela_N_Carroll on Instagram. No relation to Maurice, but there's a lot of Carrolls in Maryland, so ain't no telling. Could be kindred. Ain't no telling. And I was looking, I was like, dang, I think we are owed some oil money or something, feel me? Because like, that's that's some wormhole research for that ass. We're going to figure it out. But it was such a beautiful conversation that was held. Look out for these people. Look out, pray, keep these folks in prayer. They are the folks who are doing the work to make sure that we are well, not just now, but that we will be well for future generations. So yeah, watch Dis-Placia, Vacants in the Village. Check out some of the other films that are in the festival as well, that are all speaking to this year's theme of climate change, all of the things that need to change, that need to shift in order to secure and sustain Black, Brown, and Indigenous lives. Go to BFSFilmfest.com. Again, that's BFSFilmfest.com for more information and to buy your tickets. Be well, family.